Good morning. Welcome back. Um, so today I thought I'd talk a little bit about religion and how I see religion fitting into our society. But I think it's important that I give the background of my religion and what informs my opinion. I think this is just my experience and my opinion. I want to make sure when I talk about my journey of leaving Jehovah's Witnesses that it is clear that I still respect and even love the people in that organization. Um, Good morning. Good morning. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about religion. It's a Wednesday today, so it's a perfect time to have that conversation. And why religion? It informs a lot of what we do. And in my work, I deal with clients, and I really get to deal with, when you deal with people's monies, you get to see sort of the inner parts of their workings, right? What's blocking them from making this decision or actioning this item is their, perspective on the world and how they're wired, right? And religion is a big part of that for a lot of people. So it is an important thing to talk about. Today specifically though, let me talk about my journey with leaving Jehovah's Witnesses. And it's important that as I talk about it, I will be talking about my opinion, right? This is not gospel truth. This is just my perspective, my experience, my opinion. And I don't hate Jehovah's Witnesses. I love them. I still love them to this day. And so I would just want to make sure that's clear that, I don't hate them. There's no. I deeply love Jehovah's Witnesses, the people, not the organization itself, right? So the organization, what it stands for, how it runs, how it operates, that's what I'm going to be talking about, and this is just my experience. So anyways, growing up, I was a Jehovah's Witness, and what that meant was Tuesdays we went to Bible studies, usually at somebody's house, like a cell group or Bible study group, on a Tuesday after school from 7 o'clock till 8 o'clock. Thursdays we had our midweek meetings from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. And then Sunday we would have our Sunday discourse, or I forgot what the name was, but Sunday it'll be, from 8 or 9 a.m. to 10 or 11, so 2 hours. Saturdays we would do field service, some days during the week. Sundays we'd also do field service before church, after church. So there was a lot of that going on. As a kid growing up, I started reading early. So I started doing reading the Bible on stage from 5 years old. My first Bible reading, I was 5 years old. So I grew up in it. My brother was baptized at 9, I was 7 years old. And, the expectation was that I'm going to get baptized shortly thereafter, right? But I remember earlier on then, at that time, maybe I was 8, 9, I can't remember exactly the timelines, but these are the earliest recollections of me having questions that are not answered. And I remember one of the first questions that I remember asking my dad specifically was, how do you know if God is talking to you directly and he's not talking to the organization and talking to the elders? Or in addition to the elders, the organization, the watchtower, how do I know if God is speaking to me? And my dad said, no, how could you think like that? If you're hearing anything, it could be the devil. Don't trust that voice. Only trust the elders and organization. And I accepted it, but deep down, it just didn't sit well with me, because I just thought to myself, wait, but I thought God would love me as an individual, and surely he would want to talk to me. I just assumed God would want to talk to me, right? I'm like, why would he create me and then not want to talk to me and only speak through the organization and all that? Something was just not sitting right with me at the time. So what ended up happening was I had a number of questions that I just didn't get answers to. And so in primary school, I was grade 6 now. Then before I go that. So preaching, I remember grade 5 or so. Up until then, whenever we went preaching and I would see my classmates or my schoolmates, I would always hide. I would hide behind whoever I was with when we're preaching, knocking door to door, because we're knocking on our neighbors' doors. If it was a friend's house, I avoided it, right? If it's somebody from school and I know they lived there, I would make sure I didn't show up. And I remember around grade 5, grade 6, the specific day that I saw somebody and I tried to hide, and they saw me preaching, right? And when I went back to school, they're like, oh, you're Jehovah's Witness. I didn't know that, right? And I remember now it became a thing. I was afraid to tell people that I'm a Jehovah's Witness. So around grade 5, grade 6, I then decided, I'm tired of hiding. I'm just going to tell people the truth. I'm a Jehovah's Witness. Cat's out of the bag. And so now the cat's out of the bag. I'm a Jehovah's Witness. And I felt this freedom to be myself. It was liberating. It was empowering to say, this is who I am. I'm no longer hiding. It was still difficult when you go preaching and you see a girl that you liked or something like that, and you're wearing the tie and everything and you're knocking on people's doors. So that was some of the experiences. And around the time my dad was now putting pressure on me to get baptized. These were some of the questions that I had at the time. When we'd go preaching, we would say these people are unbelievers. Anyone who didn't follow the Jehovah's Witness religion was considered an unbeliever, right? Or non-believers. But when I would go speak to certain people, right, and you speak to somebody, you knock on their door, you give them your spiel, and some of the people say, okay, cool, yeah, sure, you can come back. So we call them return visits. And I started having return visits. In those return visits, when I met the people, they would tell me about their religion, and I'd be like, yeah, that sounds valid to me. It seems like we believe the same thing, right? But then when I would walk with my dad and I said, okay, but that person does believe in Jesus. He said he believes in Jesus. And it's like, no, but they're not Jehovah's Witnesses. They're not this. And it just didn't quite add up. I wasn't able to formulate, the question properly or anything like that. But just something didn't sit right. I just remember thinking to myself, that guy seems to believe in Jesus more than some of the witnesses I know. And I'm preaching to him. Maybe we should be having an exchange. I was more of an exchange person, but I was being trained to impose Jehovah's Witness on everybody else, right? And it wasn't a big thing, but it just didn't quite gel with me, with my experience. I was meeting people, and it's like, I'm sure God loves these people, right? If they believe in Jesus and they seem to be doing the right thing, and we agree on 80-90% of everything, maybe they believe in the Trinity and we don't. Surely that's, these are like childhood questions. So yeah, then the time to get baptized comes, and now my questions aren't being answered. But the process of getting baptized is, you now go to an elder, they ask you these questions. Once you answer, they're like, happiness. Granted, I'd been reading on stage, giving talks since I was 5 years old, right? My preaching was up and down, but I did a lot of preaching, like any Jehovah's Witness at that time. And I did a lot of work in the church, volunteer work, going to construction to help build, that kind of thing, cleaning, and to community stuff that you do. There was preaching in the rural areas, so we'd go to rural areas, far out areas, and we'd preach door to door there, spend the day Saturday, and then come back. It's like a whole trip, which was fun. Loved it, enjoyed it. So now it's like, okay, when are you going to get baptized? And, you know, I didn't push the whole baptism thing. What ended up happening was my dad got frustrated with me, said no, because I went for the first round of questions. And when you go to a baptism question setting, you're supposed to be answering according to what is the prescribed answer, right? That's how everything in Jehovah's Witnesses works. They give you the answers, then they ask you a question, and you read the answer from the Watchtower. When you come with your own thoughts and your own ideas, as long as those thoughts and ideas are edifying what is written there, then they're accepted. If it deviates a little bit, it's like, we'll deal with that later. So it's not an independent thought. You're being trained to come up with ways to support the Jehovah's Witness narrative, not to question, not to reason against or with the narrative that you're reading in the Watchtower or whatever. I was a voracious reader, so we didn't have a TV. So just to give you a sense of the level of reading, I think by grade 3, I'd read almost every book. When I say every book, I mean almost every book in the Hatfield Library, right? To the point where I was now more of a librarian's assistant. When we moved to Acadia, same thing, Acadia Library, I became an assistant there as well. By the time I went to high school, I read so many books that my appetite for more books was zero. I just read so many books. Same thing with Jehovah's Witnesses. I'd read all the stuff. I'd read Young People Ask, I'd read Insight on the Scriptures, Revelation. And when I say reading, I mean reading on my own, not just reading because you're being told, right? I'll find old books. What was this? Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3? I'm forgetting. But you just read these books that are there. I mean, I read engineering books that were just sitting around. So I read voraciously. When we borrowed books from the library, grade 2, grade 3, we would literally borrow, or what's called, take books from the library. We would take three books at a time to read over a weekend, let's say. So I can read 3 books. So you'd have 3 books going at the same time. One is a Western, one is a James Patterson action thriller, and you've got another one that's more child friendly. Alistair MacLean, all the Enid Blyton series, Secret 7, Famous 5, I read them all at a way, way, way young age. Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew, all of that. So anyways, so I'm a reader, I read a lot. So I started, having my own opinions about the religion, which didn't quite gel well with a lot of people who didn't actually read this stuff. So now in baptism, I'm asking questions in a space where I'm supposed to be answering. And that is a problem. You can't get baptized. So they kind of delayed my baptism. I was happy, moved on. Then my dad after a few months, closer to a year maybe, I was now turning 15. My dad got frustrated. He said, hey, you're not being serious about this. I've spoken to this elder and you're going to go do the questions again. So I went, and it was rigged, I'll be honest. And I was passed, and I was getting baptized. I remember I was getting baptized. I had just turned 15, I think. Yeah. And sitting at the convention to get baptized, I was just thinking, I remember this thought specifically. I was thinking about some girl who was at that convention and how I'm going to manufacture a chance encounter. And if she says yes, to me setting up a date, how much money am I going to need to go on that date? And where can we have a date where we can have some privacy so things can happen? That's literally what I was thinking. And I remember coming back and realizing, I need to be focusing on this and dedicating my life. And I thought to myself, but I think God knows that I'm thinking this and that I'm not here, I remember feeling that in my baptism. And there was this thing about, I remember having that conversation with my dad where he said, well, you can rededicate your life if you felt that your baptism wasn't 100%. So I said, you know what, I'll probably do that. Honestly speaking, I had this sense deep down that I had some sinning that I needed to do. And then, like Jesus at 33, then I'll rededicate my life. I mean, I was a 15-year-old boy, you know, so you know the thoughts that you have as a 15-year-old boy. So yeah, then I got baptized and all of that. And so as I grew older, I started doing a lot more work in the church. So like I said, construction work, would go do construction, rural work, we'll go do rural work. I started helping out, counting contributions, doing the mic roving, doing the sound at the back, standing in for a speaker, that kind of thing. So being an usher, right, welcoming people in and that kind of thing. So I started doing a lot of that. I went, and because I was learning French, I started preaching to people in the French. So I started learning French and preaching in French. There was a refugee camp, I think, for a lot of people from DRC that we would go to. There were a lot of West African people and people from DRC that we started preaching to. Some people were learning Mandarin and doing that. So the French congregation, I was a big in Avondale, Greenwood Park, the French congregation there, I was a part of it being established, right? So giving talks in French, doing everything in French. So my French was a lot better then than it is now. I haven't spoken in a long time. But yeah, I mean, preaching in French, you get good. Anyways, so you're big in that. And then my parents decided to move to South Africa. So we'd been coming to South Africa on and off, and from Zimbabwe. And at that time now, we sat down as a family, decided, okay, we're gonna go to South Africa, and we're all excited, we're all on board. But the way it happened was so sudden. Dad got a job offer, he left, but he kind of left in a hurry, and he was kind of stuck because the job offer didn't come through, and my mom went to kind of help them out, and we just left, right? My oldest brother was in Bulawayo taking care of my cousins, so it was just me, my older brother, and my little brother. So we went from one day, the house is full, to just boom, the three of us. And now we just had to take care of each other. And the reaction within the congregation was the first thing that really kind of gave me pause. The people that were closest to us, the way they reacted, at that time, I was like 17, I think, to me, it made me feel some type of way. So for example, the person that came to tell me that this is what people are saying behind your back was somebody who was considered weak in the church, or weak in the organization, or, weak in the truth, as they would say at that time. It was somebody, I think, who was just studying and, had progressed in their studying, but they felt it within them that they had to come and tell me. So they pulled me aside and said, hey, I just got to tell you this, and I just want to make you aware. It doesn't sit well with me that people would say things behind your back. It was an older lady, but, I don't know, maybe my young brain thought there was something there between us. But so she told me, and I was quite deeply hurt. Obviously now as a much more mature person, I understand the reason that those people who were closest to me reacted that way is because of the close relationship. At the time, it just felt like a betrayal. It felt like all these people, there were so many times that my dad would abandon us for people in the organization to show up, whether he was an elder or not. That was just his personality. It had nothing to do with Jehovah's. Well, it was manifest in the Jehovah's Witness faith, but that's who my dad is. At that time, he would rather go and attend to other people at the expense of his family. and this is a common trait I see. So from my perspective, he had done it for these people. So, for example, sometimes he would drop us late to school because he would prioritize dropping off somebody who's a witness, an elderly lady or whatever, to her workplace, then take us to school and would be late, right? And it would have been better if he had gone to my school, dropped them off, gone to his work, but he would prioritize them. That's the kind of person he was, right? So there's a good and the bad side as a family. You feel like, okay, my dad is investing a lot in these people, but now this is how they respond, and I think it was just them having that shock to say, wow, these people that we know, they just ditch their children. How do we respond? We didn't ask anybody for anything. I started selling fish. I would go to a friend's place, Lake Chivero, get some fish there and sell it in the city. My brother was baking scones. I would wake up in the morning, 5 a.m., bake some stuff and go sell. So I'd sell in school. All my life I sold products from, I think, grade 5 all the way through high school. I always sold something. We used to do computer parts at the time. We'd sell sound cards, graphic cards, that kind of thing. Would buy computers, put them apart, and then sell to people. I would go help somebody in the church with their computer. It needed a sound card, it needed a network card, it needed a graphics card. The motherboard needed to be replaced. So I'll do stuff like that and get money. We sold stuff. We sold fish. I sold fish. I sold scones with my brother. Bought and sold phones, that kind of thing. At school, I was always selling sweets and chocolates, that kind of thing. So we never asked anyone for anything, but obviously people could tell the distress we were under, because when my parents left, they left with the bank card, so we didn't even have access to the money that was in the account. And at the time, Zimbabwe, the currency, if you didn't spend your money within 3 months, it was worthless. So we didn't even have access to the money that my mother had. We had to figure a way to survive. I used to do gardening, so I would garden and we get some veggies from there that we just buy, meal, that kind of thing. So their reaction kind of caused a bit of a pause for me. And then fast forward to, I go to varsity. So I'm still a Jehovah's Witness, I'm still showing up, I'm still fine, but something in me is just kind of broken. Then I go to varsity, and at varsity I try to go to, I'm in Cape Town at this point, and I go to a Kingdom Hall there, and I felt more racism energy in the Kingdom Hall than I did in varsity, in the dorms, in the residences. And that kind of threw me for a loop a little bit. So these questions started having about Jehovah's Witnesses, like, okay, I don't know about this. And what the straw that broke the camel's back was, I decided at the tender age of, I think I was around 20 at this point now, I'm going to read the Bible for myself. And I just wanted to know to read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And I wanted to read it in such a way that once I'm done reading it, I can tell you who Jesus was as a person. I can tell you, oh, he's this kind of guy. He likes this, he doesn't like that. I'm trying to get the sense and feel for who is this character, who is this person, right? To know that, okay, who is Jesus? So I read the Bible, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, a number of times. And the sense of who Jesus was that I got was just different from what the Jehovah's Witness organization had been pushing to me. I just felt he was a different character. He was a different person. If he was here today, he would like me. That's a conclusion I came to, right? And it just became problematic, So from then on, it just, was downhill from there. I just couldn't. And every time I would discuss with my dad, he just couldn't wrap his arms around some of the arguments that I would bring forth. So I would say, for example, okay, we have witnesses who are going to be saved, and there are witnesses who are not going to be saved. And there are people outside Jehovah's Witnesses that are going to be saved. Is it better to be somebody who's outside Jehovah's Witnesses to be saved, who's going to be saved, or to be inside Jehovah's Witnesses and not be saved? His mind couldn't make that math, right? And I would say, if there are people outside Jehovah's Witness, it means there's a Muslim today who's going to be saved over a Jehovah's Witness, right? So the substance part of being a Jehovah's Witness is who you are out there, whether you're a Muslim, being a witness to Jehovah, as Isaiah 43:10, I think, being a witness, it's about this person, not the organization. So we've now substituted the name, the attribute of Jehovah's Witnesses, and called ourselves that, and therefore we are the witnesses of Jehovah. And anyone who's part of this organization is a witness to Jehovah by implication. And he couldn't wrap his arms around that. Where I remember at my brother's graduation, explaining to him that I would rather be somebody outside the organization who is going to be saved than to be inside the organization. Why? Because my spirit is saying no, and I don't want to be around the witnesses if my spirit disagrees with them, right? I just don't think that's fair, right? So that was the leaving part. I think the challenge I had with leaving Jehovah's Witnesses was you lose a lot of people, and because of disfellowshipping and distancing yourself from non-believers and that kind of thing, you automatically exclude yourself from a lot of people whom you love, right? So there are a lot of people that were still on Facebook today that I would love to reach out to and talk to, but there's this barrier that's there, and people just stop talking to you as well. So it's an understood thing, and you just move away. I think I was very fortunate. I didn't have a terrible experience. My dad tried to excommunicate me and stuff. My mom just refused. My dad tried to say, don't become a prefect. He succeeded in me not being a prefect. He tried to say, don't play rugby. My mom said, go play rugby. You're young, do your thing. Some things I was prevented from accessing, for sure. I wouldn't say it was that bad. You win some, you lose some. I've heard of other experiences that were much worse than mine. And even with me leaving, I had the luxury that my dad still showed up and, tried, even though his instinct was not to show up, right? In the end, I was lucky that he did show up. But I think as the religion as I've moved away more and more from the religion, what it has meant is, I think after one of the conversations I had with my dad, which was good and final, this is after I deconstructed from Christianity altogether, is I said to him, I believe God speaks to people through every religion. God isn't one thing. So he shows up to Jehovah's Witnesses, he shows up to Anglicans, and he shows up to the Jews, he shows up to the Muslims, to the Buddhists, he shows up to everybody in their language, in their way. The religion is our language of speaking to God, and God is universal type of thing. So being a witness is fundamentally okay. But for me, if the God that is described in the Bible is the actual God, it's okay, you can burn me. I'll take the Gehenna route. I will not, that's not my cup of tea. If that is the reality, then, I'm okay with taking the other path. And I think that's where he realized how serious I was, that this is not for me, because he's obviously trying to push and push and push and push. So we have these conversations. After that conversation, the relationship between us has just kind of died. And, we show up where we need to, but we don't have a relationship. And it's been dying slowly, right, up until that point. Literally after that conversation that day, we only speak when we need to and it's family around. But even if we are in the car together, my dad will not want to speak. So, you'll drive somewhere, you walk somewhere, and we're not going to talk. So, but I mean, he hasn't banned me from anything. I think he wanted to, but my mom just wouldn't allow it, so it ended up not happening. But I mean, I'm so grateful for what my parents have given me that I'm okay with that. I understand where he's at as a person and how he feels and how the religion he chose controls him. So he's dealing with his own demons, and that's okay. That's okay. My job is just to continue to hold love, to accept him as he is, accept our relationship as it is, and that sort of thing. And that acceptance, has extended to everything else in my life, right? If I'm doing business and things aren't just working out with a specific client, I don't force it anymore. I accept that either I'm the wrong person for this client. I accept that I may be inadequate. Maybe I'm not able to provide clarity for this client in a way that they would understand, right? And that's okay. That's, you've got to accept that and you've got to move on, because you will find a lot of people who hear your voice and find that your voice gives them that clarity. So that acceptance is necessary. So anyways, let me end it here today. I got work to do. I got things to do. So I think I'll continue this tomorrow, and it'll be great to wrap it up tomorrow. Hope to see you guys tomorrow. Cheers.